Okay, so I bought a Swiss lathe. So I'm going to be stealing the spotlight from past me a little bit. What you're seeing 6 weeks worth of work coming in on getting this machine in. So I spent 6 weeks prepping for this machine, planning for it, and stuff like that. And so you're not going to see any of that because that would be a super boring process of me just like talking to people and figuring stuff out because it's a super boring process. But buying a machine is kind of a big deal. It's a lot. A lot of stuff has to line up. I've bought several machines now. I've moved quite a bit. I've sold some machines as well, which is why I don't have them all in my shop. Um, and it's a really big thing. If you guys wanted a video on that, definitely let me know, and I'd be interested in making that because at this point I do have a fair bit of experience buying used machines and learning used machines and fixing them. I'm building up quite the skill set, which I mean I enjoy the process, but at some point I want this machine up and running. It's not quite running yet, so maybe hold off on that video until I actually have this fully up and going. So what we're doing now is we're just kind of getting the machine where we want it. In that big door, I couldn't get the lathe over as far as I wanted, so we set it on some machine casters, grabbed it on a pallet jack, and moved it over. It weighs 9,000 pounds, and so it was quite the feat to get this thing moved, even with all these machine casters and stuff. I don't like machine casters; they always feel sketch when moving stuff. Like these ones are rated well over this. I think they're 15,000 pounds or something each, and it's a 9,000 pound machine total. So I'm not worried about that. They just kind of roll and they move, and they want to drop the machine. If you give them the chance, they will drop the machine. So it's just really sketch. I don't like them. I much prefer pallet jacks, but in this instance, we didn't really have much of a choice there. Once you have the machine where you want it, you got to start getting it like off blocks and leveled. And so I spent a ton of time doing that. Fully leveling a 6 foot lathe was quite the experience. It spent probably an hour laying around and crawling on the ground. So um, don't recommend that experience, but it was I ended up getting a pretty good level, and so I'm pretty happy with that. So um, why did I buy a Swiss lathe? That is the question, and I'm still asking that myself a little bit. Like, there's the reasons I decided to make the financial decision to do it, and then there's the other reasons. So, firstly, how did I find this machine? Why did I like decide to get this to begin with? So I was scrolling eBay Sunday morning, as you do, looking at lathes because, of course, I was. I wasn't actually planning to buy anything, and I saw this machine about 100 miles away from me in Florida, and I looked into it a little bit and was like, this is actually a really good machine. So I started looking to see if I could get some money for this because I didn't have the cash to buy this outright. This is a financed machine, and I did have the money for it. I found I could actually get money for this machine. So um, part of me really didn't want to take any debt on. I had finished paying off the rest of my shop in October of 2024, and I'd be buying this machine almost a year later. So I had no machine payments, I had no shop debt or anything like that, and so I was 100% debt free. And it was kind of a big decision to go for round two in terms of that. It's going to be a 3-year period for this machine to get this thing fully paid off. So it's not like a super long amount of time, but it's a good amount of money. It's a good payment every month for 3 years. It's something I can do, and I would not have done this if I wasn't confident that I could do that. Even if I didn't have this machine, even if I never turned this machine on, I could do those payments. I just don't like adding extra expense to my shop. But this machine is such a big advantage over other shops and stuff like that that I just had a really hard time passing it up. So now we're going to get to the point where I actually explain what a Swiss lathe is and kind of what you've been seeing here. So that big blue long thing, if you don't know what it is a bar feeder. You put your bar stock material in that the lathe uses to make parts. It's the raw material, and that feeds it into the machine, and that's how it makes parts. This particular Swiss lathe is a 7-axis main and sub spindle Swiss lathe. So it has 2 spindles and it has 7 axes inside of it. It works as a standard lathe as well as having live tooling in it. This machine has axial and radial live tooling, meaning it can cut on the side of the part and on the face of the part, and it has axial live tooling in the sub spindle. So the sub spindle is a separate thing. The sub and the main are 2 different things. Hopefully I'll have some good B-roll footage to put over this. And so you can feed a part in, turn it on the main spindle, doing any milling operations, and then come grab it with the sub spindle, clamp onto the part it off, and then you can repeat that process. You can do any finishing on the sub spindle, and then it drops it into a part tray, and you're done. And this main spindle can then repeat this process, and so it can feed essentially an infinite amount of material into the machine as long as you keep the bar feeder set up. And this could have theoretically almost 100% uptime, assuming tools don't wear out and whatnot. Which is a huge force multiplier, especially that this machine, if you're familiar with machining, is kind of like having a lathe with a 4-axis mill inside of it, or a 4-axis mill with a lathe. And then the sub spindle is a 3-axis mill with a lathe. And so it's a very cool machine, and it allows you to make a lot of parts very easily. So part of what I plan to do with this machine is make a lot of hardware with it. Make hardware, sell hardware, make my own hardware, make custom hardware. That was kind of the main reason I got this machine. The other reason I got this machine is this being a 4-axis mill with a big bore, I can actually make all my balisong handles on it, or some of my balisong handles on it. So this would allow me to remove that work off of my CNC mill and just focus on doing blades and folding knives on that while maintaining balisongs and likely reducing the price of them because a lot less work is going to be going into it on my end. We'll see about that price thing. This is a very expensive machine to run, so even though I might be saving some of my time, I'm going to be adding quite a bit of expense in machine time, and so we might net even on this, and just that money's going to go into machine time versus my time. So that might be what ends up happening. I'm not totally sure yet because I don't have the actual operating costs of this machine. I just have guesstimates of it. So other than those things, which will hopefully eat up a fair bit of time in this machine every week, I can also do job shop work, which is something I've looked at doing for a while. I haven't really done any job shop work. I've maybe done 1 or 2 small things, but being able to program 1,000 parts out of some material and then press go and just be able to run 1,000 parts over a few days and never really mess with it, just check tolerances and make sure I'm not making scrap, and other than that, be pretty hands-off on the process and just package and be done, that is hugely appealing to me. Having something that I can actually do job shop work on, start building out some job shop in this shop, just do lathe parts and Swiss lathe parts, and it allows me to still focus my time on making products, but bring in some extra income on a machine that should have some downtime. It's of course going to take some of my time, but it's going to be a lot less than if I was running parts on the mill. And getting those large number of jobs is going to really offset the amount of time it takes to like program and set this machine up, because that is a huge amount of time. So I'm hoping to not have to do that, or to really not feel the need or want to do that, but that is always an option, and I have looked at a fair bit of work at this point where it's like, yes, I could be taking this work, but I'm choosing not to. And seeing, just in the little bit of time I've had this machine, seeing probably $10,000 worth of work that I've passed up, really makes me feel a lot better about this opportunity with this machine, because I know if this machine isn't making money for me if this machine isn't making money for me how I expected it to, I could always just start doing some job shop work and bring in some extra income, which will be really nice, and at very least have this machine pay for itself every month, which is the goal, of course. I would not buy a machine I did not think would pay for itself. So buying this machine is a bit of a risk, right? Every big leap you take like this is risky, right? Like if my income on my shop drops immediately, then I have a big payment to make on a machine every month and my shop payment and stuff like that. So there's inherent risk in everything you do. This is my 4th CNC machine I've bought, and so at this point I've bought a few machines. I've bought 3 CNC mills at this point, and so I've become pretty used to risk buying used machines and stuff like that, and that's why I'm comfortable buying a machine like this, fixing it up. I'm willing to go out on a financial limb and buy a machine like this, and I know that I'm going to be able to fix any problems that show up, and I'm going to be able to make parts and stuff like that. I've never run a lathe before, so I have to learn that, but I have a very high level of confidence that I'm going to be able to figure that out in a reasonable amount of time. That level of self-confidence is, I feel, earned to some extent, where I've done these things. I've been here, I've done it. So Part of me thinks it's an earned level of self confidence, and then I hit a hiccup and have no idea what I'm doing, and I'm like, why did I do this? I'm an idiot. And then I get through that, and I'm really glad I made a decision, like buying the Robo Drill a year ago. Uh, Fanuc controller, never used Fanuc. This lathe has a Fanuc controller. Um, and I went out on a limb and I bought the machine, and I was really frustrated to begin with. It was really annoying. I was really having a hard time with it, and then I got it down, and I made an amazing decision in hindsight. That the Robo Drill is an amazing machine. It's such a huge upgrade from a Tormach, but in the moment, sometimes you regret a decision. But give that a little bit of time to mature and a little bit of time with the decision. And I found basically every decision I've ever made in this business has been a decision that I'm pretty happy with. Of course, there are small things. Every big decision I've been happy with, but there are small things, of course, that you decide to change, and you change those, or you change how you make your decisions, and that's, I think, how you improve what you do and your product. And so that's basically a summary of why I was willing to take a risk like this and buy a machine like this. And I don't think it's a huge risk personally. I think it's a pretty small one, but there's inherent risk in everything, right? So now I'm pulling off the back of the lathe spindle, and this is the hydraulic clamp that actuates the collet. And so pulling this thing off without stripping everything and making sure it was good to go was quite the feat. I'm recording this voiceover a little bit in the future, and I've been running the lathe for a few months now, and I'm remembering when I reassembled this, I stripped a screw and wasn't able to get it to torque value. And so now I'm a little worried about that because I completely forgot that existed until reviewing this footage. It's been running fine for several months, or not several, but like 4 or 5 months, but that's a little bit concerning. So hopefully that doesn't crop up in the future and cause any issues. So I was installing the tower light for this bar feeder, and the previous tower light had been cut off or broken off at some point. And so I went ahead and bought one when I bought some parts from the bar feeder company. And so I just 3D printed a little bracket because I didn't have the bracket that was supposed to go with it. And 3D printing is just one of the best tools you can get in your shop. This was just a one and done. I'm still using this several months later, and I'm very, very pleased with how this worked. So while I'm waiting for the other stuff that I needed for the chuck, I decided to go ahead and start work on some of the other things. One of the things I needed to do was rewire this Royal Mist Collector. It was wired for 480 volts. I'm running it on 240, so I went ahead and rewired it according to the diagram. I've done this a couple times, and thankfully rewiring motors is really simple. Another thing I needed to do was start cleaning the top of the lathe to start prepping it for the actual mist collector. In a moment, you're going to see everything that was involved in getting the mist collector to actually fit this machine, as this was not the original mist collector. The company that I bought it from listed it with a mist collector, but apparently I bought it from a machine broker, and the shop they bought it out from didn't actually sell them the mist collector, so they incorrectly listed the machine as included with the mist collector. So I got the machine, and I was like, hey, I don't have a mist collector. It was listed, and so they sent me one that they had, which was not to the machine. So there's going to be some retrofit getting this to work. At the end of the day, I got a mist collector. That's what I needed. It's rated for oil and stuff like that, so we should be good. Because with this machine, you really do not want oil in your atmosphere being particleized. You need to pull that oil out of the machine for health and fire reasons. So I'm going to save you about an hour of view time because this chuck here, the chuck you're about to see me unbox, is the wrong chuck. I bought an M1246. I was supposed to buy an MK1246. I read the plate off of my old chuck, which was broken by the hydraulic shop. I don't know if that's been mentioned at this point in the video. So I sent the chuck to get rebuilt. I bought a seal kit for it. I sent it to get rebuilt. The local hydraulic shop that I gave it to ended up breaking it, and then they bought me a new chuck. So this is that new chuck, which is the wrong chuck. There's been a whole litany of things that have happened after this that was really annoying to deal with. But what you're going to miss out on seeing is almost an entire day of me trying to install this chuck and then realizing, wait, this is the wrong chuck, because they're very similar. They're definitely different,
but they're similar enough that I thought maybe it was just a slight modification for a newer version of the chuck, because the one that was on my machine was a decade old. And through the power of editing, here's the new chuck. This definitely didn't take weeks to get and cost me much, much more time. If you're keeping tally of time, as of the recording of this voiceover, it is the 31st of January. This chuck works though. So yeah, that's the moral of the story there is this one does work. So the installation of this chuck was kind of just a repeat of what I did last time. A couple hours of me very carefully and slowly putting this thing on. Really trying not to mar anything, because I don't obviously want to mar the lathe parts. This one went pretty well. When I went to bolt it in, I did strip a bolt, which I forgot about until like yesterday, and I've been running the lathe with the bolt stripped, so I guess it's fine. I'm just going to leave it. 5 of the 6 are good and torqued properly. One of them stripped while torquing, so it's probably fine. But we're done with this chuck. This chuck was way too much time of my life. Okay, so here is just a quick video of the chuck actually working. You can see it opening and closing the chuck, thus clamping on the end mill that I just put in there. I had an 1/8 inch end mill and an 1/8 inch collet. So yeah, do you want to know the real kicker about this whole chuck replacement? It never needed to happen. The reason it was leaking, and you'll see it in a second, is because the drain line was too high. The drain line was too high, flooding the chuck, causing it to leak. I put the brand new chuck on and it still leaked, which was really not encouraging. And so this entire process that cost me like 2 months of time was fixed by me moving the drain line like 6 inches. I am being 100% serious. It's such a dumb thing. I had no idea. I had no reason to know. I talked to the techs and they were like, yeah, your chuck's broken. And so who am I going to believe? The techs? Yeah, obviously. So I don't know, just a level of frustration. I'm like $2,000 out of pocket for this and months of time. And it's just like, really, this is it. This is what it was. And so I'm glad it's fixed. Don't get me wrong. But like, it could have been fixed in 5 minutes, not 2 months and tens of hours of my time. So if you look in this video at the kind of back left of the screen, you can see the strong drip that the hydraulic chuck was putting out. That's only because the black tubing that runs out of the bottom of that chuck was too high up. That was literally it. That was the entire problem. So I've moved that line down and now I have 0 issues. No leaks, no nothing. So yeah, an incredibly frustrating experience that was solved by simply moving that black line down, which is just, I'm glad it was simple, but man, is that such a dumb thing to cost so much time and money. Now, hindsight is often 20/20, which is what I was thinking when I was sludging out this tank with this stupid little thing, because there was just a little bit of oil left in the bottom, and I was like, okay, I'll clean that in when I'm ready to put the new oil in, but it really is hard to get out. I should have done that before putting that in my shop. I could have just tipped it and drained it. It would have been super easy, but now I had to do it like this, which was just an absolute nightmare. Okay, now comes the fun part where I get to actually put some oil in the tank now. The reason I was trying to get all the oil out of there was because I didn't want to contaminate my oil. That tank had been outside, and so there was definitely some water in there. There was old oil and kind of gross stuff in it. I really should have cleaned the tank before I put it in my shop. That really should have happened. There's not enough room for it to come out of my shop anymore. And so I did the best I could how it was, which is not as good as I would have liked it. I put a clear water-like oil into the machine. It's a Blaser Swiss oil, a Swiss lube. So it's a really nice oil, and I didn't want to contaminate it. It was clear in the tank. It now has a slight amber color to it. It's not like amber, it just has a slight amber color to it. And so there definitely is a little bit of contamination, but I don't think it's enough to cause an issue. The previous oil in there would have also been Swiss lube. I think I probably got most of the water out of the tank, being that water sinks, and the only thing I couldn't get out of there was the very top layer of stuff that didn't get sucked out by that pump I had. So I think I did a pretty good job. We'll see in the future. And then I do need a little bit more oil for the machine. The 55 gallons was technically enough, but not quite comfortably enough. I think with part carry out and a little bit of oil loss. It won't be too long before I need another 55 gallons just to top it off. And then from there, it should last an incredibly long time. It's very expensive though, so I don't really want to buy that until I need it. There's never any end to fixing things. I had previously set up and completely fixed the bar feeder, and then when I went to go actually use it, I had to redo that all again because it was an issue. I also didn't apparently have any oil in it, which I did not realize it did not have any oil in it. I had never tried to run with oil before, but now that I apparently am actually properly setting things up and running them, I needed 15 gallons of ISO 100 oil. And so that delayed me a little bit. It wasn't that terribly expensive. That being said, for this machine, I think I calculated I have now bought almost 80 gallons of oil for the machine. 55 of those was for the cutting oil, but the rest of it is actual machine oil I've had to purchase, which is just an absurd amount of oil. Anyways, yeah, I did end up getting this all fixed and mostly fixed, I should say. There's still a couple really small things with alignment that it's like missing a part or something. I don't know if it's because I took it out or because it wasn't in it, and so things don't line up quite perfectly, but for operation where it's not automatically changing bars, it's been working totally great. It's pulled the material out of the bar a couple times, which I've talked to somebody else who also uses these bar feeders, is apparently a somewhat common issue. So every time I load a bar in, I'll use the hand crank and press it on a little harder, and that seems to have done pretty good. I also increased the back pressure on the machine to 20% from 15%, which seems to be working better. I'm running an 1.5-inch bar, hopefully the 1/4 and 1/2-inch bar, and mostly I'm going to be running in this machine is it stays on a little better. And there we are. Those are the first chips on the Swiss. It took a long time to get there for some very anticlimactic chips. They were terrible, ugly, chattery chips, but chips are chips, and they're the first ones. The reason it was so bad is because there isn't a guide bushing installed for the 1.5-inch material. I do have an 1.5-inch guide bushing. I had purchased it when I initially purchased the machine. I bought a lot of guide bushings, and they got sent back to the sender. I got those sent back, and so shortly after this, I get the actual guide bushing in, and then rerun that, and you'll see that in a second here. Believe it or not, guide bushings in a Swiss machine make a big difference in how parts run, because they're essential. And here you see it actually running material with a guide bushing. Makes a big difference, doesn't it? Basically, it's doing that. I don't know how much I want. There's a lot of stuff I'm leaving out of this video for the sake of time. I think this is already a kind of a long video. And I have cut, this whole thing is 3 months. I have 125 clips filmed for this video, of which I'm using maybe 50. And most of those are 10 minutes roughly each. So that's about how much I'm cutting out of this video. And a lot of them are the camera's film length, which is 30 minutes. So one of the initial programming hiccups here was that my post-processor was posting my Z coordinates backwards, because Swiss machines are different than standard lathes with how they feed material. The Z positive direction on a Swiss tech is the same direction, or not on a Swiss tech, on a Swiss lathe, is the same direction as it is on a standard lathe. But what it does feeding in that same direction is wildly different. So if you have a lathe with the spindle on the left, which how most of them are, and you feed your Z in a positive direction, your tool post is going to move right. On a Swiss lathe, your tool post is going to stay stationary and your spindle is going to move right. Which they're moving in the same direction. But despite moving in the same direction, what is happening at the tools is wildly different. Feeding to the right on a standard lathe feeds the tools out of the material. It feeds them away from the spindle. On a Swiss lathe, it feeds the material into the tools. And so effectively, the Z on a standard lathe is the opposite sign as the Z on a Swiss lathe. And so the Z positive on a standard lathe is a Z negative on a Swiss lathe. And so I was having that post the code backwards just with how that works. So that was really confusing because I wasn't sure why my code was being weird. And then I realized, oh wait, the Z is backwards. And that fixed it a lot. One of the other things I've had a lot of trouble with on this machine is it has really bad documentation for the customers. And so I've spent a lot of time on the phone with Swiss Tech, which their techs and the people over at Swiss Tech have been very understanding. I did not buy this machine new. I bought a used machine. and they've been very, very helpful in the process of getting this machine up and going and telling me stuff. The real problem I have with Swiss Tech is not the people, it's the I've heard it described as tribal knowledge before. Is it's knowledge that really should be documented and out there, especially stuff that should be in the user manual, but it's tribal knowledge. If I call their programmer and say, hey, what's up with this? He can be like, oh, the user manual is wrong. Do the code like this and not this. Or, hey, I know we don't tell you how to set tools on this machine in the user manual. Do it like this. And they have an internal, he had a PowerPoint slide that he ended up sending me that I heard about how to set tools. And it's like, well, that PowerPoint slide could be in the user manual, right? And the user manual, I have 2 copies of it. I have the copy that came with the machine, and I have a digital copy that Swiss Tech sent me, presumably a newer version of it. And a lot of the code in there is wrong. And it's just, I haven't been happy with having to call the tech every time I need to learn about something because the user manual is wrong. It's explicitly wrong in a lot of cases. And so I don't even trust reading the user manual to figure things out because with my experience of programming based off of the user manual, it is incorrect, which the techs have explicitly told me, hey, the user manual is wrong on this point. And so what else is it wrong with? And so I end up wasting a lot of Swiss techs' time and the people's there's time because their user manual is terrible. Like even the digital copy has atrocious spelling mistakes and stuff like that. That's coming from me. I can barely spell, and it is really bad. I wouldn't say it's really bad if the information in it was correct. Some spelling mistakes, big whoop. But the actual information in the program examples for the machine are wrong, and they do not explain how to do things like set tools, set lathe tools. It doesn't give you the commands for that. This could be really easily rectified with updating the user manual or giving you a link to videos on how to do this or, anything like that. But instead, I end up calling the techs and spending a ton of their time going over stupid small things that really could have been in the manual and would have saved everyone a lot of time. I usually only try to involve techs when it's something that I really need techs for, not small things like setting a tool. So, I've never called a tech to ask about how to set tools before. And from talking to the techs, this is seemingly a somewhat common question. So I would love to see that improved, especially for the cost of these machines. Okay, we have another time skip here. It's me from the future. As of the recording of this voiceover section, it is the end of July 2026. So this video has kind of been sitting in the background doing nothing for a hot minute now. Good news is the lathe has been up and running for a few months now. I believe March I finally got it fully up and running. So yeah, that's been great to have running. It's a great machine. There are maybe a couple things that are annoying about it, but other than that, the amount of work that went into getting it up and running was really good. How I was planning to use it though didn't really go to plan. I was really planning to do a lot of hardware on it. Swiss lathes are good for hardware and stuff like that. This being a big bore Swiss, it's not particularly good for that kind of thing. It does work. I have used it for that. I have made hardware. I have worked on custom hardware. It does totally work. It's just a large machine with large travels, with large tooling, and so some of the pressures you need for clamping and stuff like that are a little high and tend to like to crush the screw heads and stuff like that. It's adjustable, but it is still kind of annoying. All that being said, totally works for that. I've made some stuff. I've made well over 1,000 parts on this machine now, and it works well. I've been doing a lot of job shop work, a lot of fittings and stainless steel is what I've been running. Mostly turning work, very little actually milling inside of it. That being said, I am working on a project now where I will be doing milling in it. And so I've had to learn a lot of that. Overall, it's been a really good experience to learn a machine like this. It's a great tool to have in the shop and the ability to use it. So I'm pretty excited to get this thing. It is almost fully up. There are still a couple things I need to do and implement, like the live tooling needs to be mostly rebuilt. Maybe not 100% sure on that, but it does seem like it needs to be rebuilt. And then there's
just a couple small things to tweak. Overall, this machine was several months of just hard work getting it up and running and just hitting my head against a wall. But now that it's up, now that it's running, now that it's making money, it's a great machine to have in the shop. It was a good decision. I believe it was a good decision. I'm not regretting this decision. Um, Coming up on 9 months after the purchase, I'm pretty pleased with it. So it's been a great tool to have. It's been super useful, and I'm excited to keep using it and see what I do with it. I am planning on getting pens up and running on it, so pens will be my first product line to end up being on the Swiss. I do make some parts for the folder and stuff like that on this, but having a full product line on the Swiss should be neat. So um, pens are in the future soon. They will be something that's being run pretty soon, so expect to see those. Anyways, if you watch this full video, thank you so much for watching. Um, it's fun making these things. It's I'm not a good YouTuber. I don't YouTube is not my main thing, and so making a video like this is quite a lot of work. But I wanted to make this. I filmed so much of it that it was like, okay, I gotta just finish this, and so I'm finishing this video months after I started filming. Because it's just kind of been looming over me in terms of I should really finish that video. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it's a fun video to watch, and watching somebody set up a machine like this is a neat thing for you guys. Don't have any more plans on big machine setup stuff, but I did just hit 4 years of self-taught machining, and so I'm probably going to do a video on that probably pretty quickly because I think there's a good update from the 1 year of machining video I did 3 years ago now. So, I learned a lot on the Swiss, and so I think sharing some of that would be helpful, or at least maybe a little entertaining for some people. Anyways, like I said, thank you for watching. Yeah,